Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
Today we're taking a look at Sorcerer City.
Sorcerer City is brought to you by Druid City Games. It plays 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up. Each game takes about 45 to 60 minutes to play.
Well, let's go see what wizard can expand and rebuild their city the best. Setup is pretty straightforward. Each player is going to receive 12 starting city tiles, 3 magic transform cards, and a score tracker. Now the score tracker has 4 different types of scoring. You have magic, you have influence, gold, and prestige.
Next, put the influence reward board in the middle of the table. You'll see 5 years depicted on this board. Each of these years is 1 round of play.
Right.
Put a random influence reward under each of the first 4 years. Also, and unfortunately, you'll put a random monster type under each of the first 4 years. Under the year 1 and year 2, you'll put monsters from tier 1. Right. And under year 3 and 4, you'll put monsters from tier 2, which, not surprisingly,
way more difficult.
They're much more difficult and much more annoying.
Yep.
Also, if you're playing with only 2 players, you'll put a random mystery player card for the appropriate year under each of the 5 years. This will keep the 2 live players, human players, from always coming in first and second. Right. In fact, the mystery player can come in first.
Potentially can win.
Yeah, so that is a nice way of playing with 2 players. You'll also want to put the marketplace in the center of the table as well. This will allow you to purchase tiles. The marketplace tent shows tier 1 through tier 4, and you'll populate this by putting 3 tiles from each of those tiers in a column under the appropriate location. Lastly, you'll put the stack of rainbow tiles, which represent basically color wild tiles, near the marketplace. They are, and very useful.
Hugely.
And then you'll put these, what they call prestige tokens, also nearby so all players can access them.
All right, so the game can begin. And what you start with is the building phase. And what's interesting here is that you take your tiles, and if you're midway in the game, you're going to have way more than 12 tiles. But at the start, you have 12 tiles, you shuffle them up face down so you don't know what order they're going to come out. You're going to create a stack, and that's going to be what you build from, taking one off the top and building your city out. Now, the interesting thing is that you have 2 minutes to do this. Yeah. 2 minutes. So you set the timer and go. And initially, there's not that big rush of, oh, hurry, hurry, hurry. It's later in the game when that starts to kick in, when you have a huge stack of tiles that you've acquired from various ways, from the marketplace, or if you've been given free tiles with awards and so forth.
And monsters.
And monsters.
Now, a key thing to remember is that once you've turned over a tile and placed it, it is fixed in that position unless it can be moved by either a spell or a monster.
Exactly. That's the thing. Once you let go of it, you can't move it.
Yeah,
take your hand off that piece. That's it.
It's fixed. Yeah,
it's fixed.
You can't move it. You can't rotate it. It's in place. Yeah. Now, there are a number of things you want to keep in mind as you're building your city. And kind of think of this as the fantasy version of Inception, or for those of you who are old enough and remember the movie Dark City. Yeah, right? Think of this is what you're doing. Each round you're going to be rebuilding this magical city. Yep. And the things that are expanding. And expanding because each round you have more tiles. Yep. Now, the 3 goals you have as you're building will drive what you're actually doing. So let me show you some of those examples. The goals are shown by these little shields, and the first of the 3 show 3 squares across. And what this represents is that for the colored region that it's in this case this one is yellow, it says if you have 3 or more tiles in that region, so it's got to be a contiguous region. In this case, a yellow region, you'll get 1 gold for each of those tiles in that region. So if you end up with managing to get 4 or 5 contiguous tiles, yellow tiles in that region, you will get 4 or 5 gold. Right. So it really encourages you to be able to build this out. Obviously, it's not straightforward. Right.
But again, you don't know how those tiles are going to come out. So you have to kind of plan ahead as you're building and hope that you put things in the right order and that you get to the tiles in time that you can build that line.
Yes, because you only have 2 minutes. Right. So you might choose, and we should say this right up front, you can stop building at any time, and we'll tell you in a second why you would stop building before the timer's done. This is the second type of goal, and it shows 4 squares in a square formation. This does not require you to build 4 tiles in a row. What this does is any contiguous region, it doesn't have to be a straight line, but in any shape, but the colors have to be contiguous in that region. That will score you if you have 3 or more. Again, you'll score 1 or more, or that many points for that type of score track. So again, the 4 score tracks are gold, prestige, influence, and magic.
Exactly.
And we'll tell you in a bit about why each of those have specific values. So this is just trying to connect a bunch of tiles to create this
optimal city.
This flowing region, yeah. And this might conflict with this, but in general, you might be able to use this synergistically.
Potentially.
The last type of goal is this, and it shows a colored square in the middle of 5 other gray shield squares. And what this says is for this shield and each shield that's adjacent, and by adjacent we mean both orthogonal and diagonal.
That's right.
Each shield, if there's one or more shields in this tile and one or more shields in each of those adjacent tiles, you will get 1 point of that color type on that colored track for each of those shields. So even if the shield's just tile standing off on its own, you'll get at least, in this case, 1 point on the green prestige track. If you end up with 5 shields around it, including this shield then as well, that'll make a 6th shield, and you get 6 points on the green track. So as you're doing all this, one of the things that you're challenged with is that I could either extend one region of one color, or maybe I could get benefits on another color, and you're trying to figure out which one's more important.
You might have to sacrifice
exactly
to do this instead this time, because, oh, this time I really need gold, or this time I really need magic.
Yeah, and you're driven not only by the tiles, but also you're competing with your neighbors in terms of things like influence. And we'll talk about influence in a bit.
Now, once the 2 minutes is up, it's time to score your city.
As soon as the 2 minutes ends, it's important that everybody immediately stops building. No matter how many tiles you have in your stack.
Off the city.
Exactly. So you might have a lot of tiles left in your stack. That's okay. Yeah. And sometimes I have stopped building
because you know there's monsters coming.
Yes, and so monsters do bad things. You might get to a place saying, well, I've got about 2/3 of my stack used. I don't want to push my luck anymore. So there are reasons you might stop building before the 2 minutes are up. But as Mark has said, the 2 minutes seems like a shorter and shorter time the more and more tiles you have to place.
It does indeed. And you're going to go around basically. Everybody's going to score their city separately. And the important thing to note is that your score track starts at 0 after every round. So if you've got score track moved up, you need to move it back to 0 before you score your city for this last play. So for my city example here, real quick, I have a bunch of magic in a straight line. So basically this is giving me 1, 2, 3, 4 points of magic right out of the gate for this city. And I've got some other things here. I think Randy's city is a little bit more, but my gold, I've only got like 3 points of gold in a straight line. And then I'm missing, I've got some good shield stuff in my city, but I'm missing the influence, which is a really important one. We'll tell you a little bit why each of these is important in a minute.
Yep. Mine actually has all 3 shield or gold types represented. You can see Mark's got the four purples in a row for his magic. I've got a similar goal here, but I only have 3 purples in a row, so I'll get 3 points of magic. If you go up here, you'll see I've got this square formation for influence. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 because I have a region of 4 contiguous reds. They're not in a straight line, but this one doesn't require these to be in a straight line, so I'd get 4 influence for that. If you come down here to this shield right here, this is one where you score for adjacent shields. This will give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the red track. I've got a 3 in a row or a straight line gold goal here, and that gives me 1, 2, 3 gold there. This is another shield. This time it's in green, so it gives me 1, 2, 3, 4 on the green track. And lastly, this region for gold will give me 1, 2, 3, 4 because I have 4 contiguous yellows. That'll give 4 gold for me. So that's the way you would score.
Right.
And you would use, again, these trackers to keep track of that over time.
Because you are going to be spinning stuff here in a minute.
You will. So. And the things that you'll be spinning, you will never have gold pieces in hand. You'll always be spinning gold from this track and moving down the appropriate marker.
All right, next, after you've scored your cities, you're going to do a magic transform. And that's these 3 cards that you have. Every player has the same 3 cards. And what you're going to do is you're going to be turning magic points into potential influence or gold or prestige.
That's right.
So you're going to take your card and keep it hidden on what you're going to transform, and then everybody simultaneously flips their card. And some of the give and take here is that you might want your prestige to be higher, right? Because that gives you the ultimate goal of getting points at the end of the game.
That's true.
But influence, let's talk a little bit about influence, why you might pour yourself into influence here, because basically that's going to give you the option to get the awards at the end of the different years.
Right.
Because if you're the lead player in influence, you get both awards.
Right. So, and that's the key. When we talk about these 4 different types of elements, if you will, magic doesn't have any value in itself. Gold has the benefit of being able to buy tiles that you can add to your deck, so that's good. Influence, whoever has the most influence will get both the prestige points for that year as well as the reward card.
Right.
The person who is second in influence gets either the
One or the
prestige
other.
points or the reward card, and the person who's third will get whatever one
Whatever's
of the
left
two.
over.
Yeah, whatever thing that the second player didn't choose. So if you think of it, there's the influence track is useful to optimize for round benefits.
Right.
But ultimately, as Mark said, prestige points is what you need to win
Really
the game as a whole. So that's more of the long-term thinking versus the short-term thinking. The reason you keep these cards separate is you might look across the table and you're saying, wow, I know he's low on gold, but he's got more influence points than me. If I turn my magic into influence, I could have the most influence this round and win both the points and the reward.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you're looking across the table at me going, well, I really want gold so I can buy this stuff, but I don't want to come in second or third.
Right.
So that's why the transformation of magic is so important here.
And not only does it affect that, but there are tiles that you will acquire in the marketplace that can transform magic points into potentially, there is one that I like in particular that transforms magic into every one of the other points, right? So you could get 3 extra points of influence, 3 extra points of gold, and 3 extra points of prestige.
By spending 3 magic.
Spending 3 magic.
Yeah. So,
and that comes from a tile that is a one that you would have to purchase.
Yeah, so magic in itself, no value.
Right.
The value comes in as you transmute it, if you will.
Indeed.
And what's a game about building a magical city without some sort of alchemy involved?
Exactly.
So the value of magic is in the fact it gives you the opportunity to transmute it or transform it into one of the other 3 commodities.
Right.
Now, after everybody has transformed their magic into one of the other 3 elements, we determine who has the highest influence.
Right.
That person is the one who will get both the points and the reward for that year, as we mentioned before. The second player gets either the points or the reward, and the third player gets whatever the second player didn't choose. Now, some of these rewards involve discounts to the tiles you'll be buying, and that can be very, very useful because the next phase is actually buying tiles. Starting with the player who has the most influence, they get the option of buying up to 2 tiles from the market. If they have more than 20 gold, they can actually buy 3 tiles. And there may be, one of the rewards might allow them to actually get a free tile.
Yeah.
So the different tiers start at a lower cost, and each tier has a slightly higher cost and slightly better powers as well. The things on the tiles include rewards or goals like we've mentioned before, but they also include things like spells, which can be very valuable. Some spells can be invoked during the building phase, others after the building phase.
The other important tile in the marketplace is the rainbow tile, right? This is basically a wild. It handles all the colors. Wherever it connects every color possible.
And it's not just one. You don't have to say, well, I'm playing this wild tile, this rainbow tile, and it's red. Basically, when you're doing scoring phase, it counts as all colors at all times. So
it's pretty awesome.
It is.
And it's a little bit more pricey maybe because it's 8 gold, right? And gold is not plentiful in general. So, but it is definitely a valuable tile to have in your stack of city possibilities.
Agreed. After all players have finished buying tiles, it's time to award prestige points. Now what this involves is taking the number of prestige points you have acquired during that round and transforming them to these prestige tokens. These are the only things that carry forward between rounds. Gold, magic, and influence do not.
Everything zeroes out.
Now, you might feel a little bit disappointed because you have the least prestige that particular round, but there's a benefit. There is indeed. So if you have the lowest prestige for that round, you get to take a tile off the top of the stack for the tier that corresponds to that year. So if it's the second year, you get a free tile off the top of the tier 2 stack. And these can be very useful, especially as the years progress.
Indeed. Now, before you gather up your city and start the next round, everyone is warded. Well, warded's not quite right. Everyone is penalized by given a monster tile. And there's all these monsters have varying effects, but like they do so many bad things to your city as you build. And they have to get shuffled back into your city and they come out and you have to deal with their consequences.
Yeah, they may have immediate effects or they may have constraints on where you place them, but they usually involve some disruption to the way you're building.
For me, the Kraken is so frustrating because he'll come out and he will basically tear up 3 of your city tiles. You do get to choose which 3.
Right, true.
But they're tore up and they're put, bam, at the bottom of your stack of tiles. You get back to them, but if you're down to like 20 seconds,
you may never see them again.
You never see them again.
Yeah, yeah. And likewise, the giant, the constraint for the giant is when he comes out, you have to place him on top of one of the tiles that you've purchased. And you can tell which tiles they are because they have the price in the upper right. But that obscures and eliminates any benefits that you've gotten for that tile. And for some of the tiles, at least you can choose it. But the problem is that diminishes the value of the points you're scoring for that city.
It does indeed. But there are several types of monsters here.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things about the tiles that you can buy in the store is some of them allow you to destroy a monster.
That's right.
Some have spells that actually allow you to get them out of the game.
Yeah, yeah. So this is why I said before, there are maybe reasons that you choose to stop building before the timer's up.
Indeed.
I had, during one of the games we played, I got 2/3 of the way through the deck, and I had just like 6 tiles left, and I hadn't seen some of the bad monsters, so it's like, okay, I'm out.
I'm done.
I'm not, this is Russian roulette, I'm not pulling the trigger anymore.
Indeed. All right, now that you have your monster in hand, which is so fun, you're going to take all your city tiles, gather everything up with the monsters, and shuffle them all back together, and basically zero out your score track and get ready for the next round.
Now that's the way each round plays until you get to the 5th round. The 5th round is a little bit different in the sense that there is no influence reward.
Right.
You're only competing for the number of prestige points.
Right.
So keep that in mind as you're playing the 4th or the 5th round. Also, there's no buying of tiles, so getting gold during the last
doesn't
round
really
is not
help
important.
you. Yeah.
And there's no additional monster at the end of the 5th round. So as you're playing the 5th round, the real thing you're focusing on is getting as much influence as you can, and actually you might be thinking about that as you're playing the first 4 rounds as well.
Indeed.
At the end of the 5th round, you total up all of your prestige points, and whoever has the most prestige wins the game.
All right, folks, once again, just a reminder, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep an eye on the campaign for any changes. Now, with that said, this game is definitely got some really interesting puzzling nature about it. And the fact that building out these cities is timed, and as the rounds go on, how much more stressful it becomes as you get in those later rounds. It's really, really fun, really fun.
And it can also be very strategic in the sense that the tiles you buy, you want to be synergistic with the tiles that are already in your stack. So I found that there are the one reward or goal, rather, I should say, that has the 4. You basically are trying to create a region of any shape.
Yeah.
If you have multiple of those in the same region, they
powerful.
multiply. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's this very strategic element, and as you go forward, you can find yourself focusing, but you don't want to focus too much because then you'll find yourself, well, I got a ton of influence, but I have no magic or I have no gold. So I think that gives you both the immediate puzzle element, but also requires you to think ahead to future rounds.
Indeed. And it has the aspect, too, of oh, maybe I don't want my tiles to be so huge and keep your deck kind of thin so you know what you get to really fast.
That's true, because in the end, in the later rounds rather, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to play all your tiles if you have too many of them.
So true. Yep. All right, so if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they would appreciate your support.
Definitely.
So I think that's it from us. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.